Hey everybody, it's me. I'm here with an overview of next month's lesson and project. This is our last lesson for the year, and the kids are going to be learning about an artist by the name of Romare Bearden. He was an artist whose work depicted his heritage and the Black experience. And we start the conversation about what it means to be a Renaissance man, because Romare Bearden was definitely a Renaissance man based on his experiences and his pursuit of knowledge. So we start from the beginning as we always do, and we discuss where he was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as a toddler, his parents moved to New York City. And they lived in a time during what was called the Harlem Renaissance, when art and culture was booming and bustling. And we discuss a little bit about his parents because his parents had a very big influence on his life. The way that they pursued life was the way that he pursued life. And at first, of course, he wanted to be an artist and he loved doing cartoons, but his parents had very different ideas for him, and that was to be a doctor. This slide here we use to highlight and showcase his many talents and life experiences and his pursuit and depth of knowledge, all that were contributing factors to who he was as an artist. So you just want to kind of briefly go over each one of these using the notes in the lesson guide and highlight the important points, but it's kind of interesting to look at a whole snapshot on this, just showing how varied his experiences were and that ultimately that pursuit of knowledge, because it doesn't end here. Here we talk about what artists inspired Romare Bearden, because any good artist is inspired by other artists. It was important for him to look to past artists and learn from them, and also present artists, both in the United States and Mexico, to be inspired by them, not to copy them or emulate them, but to create his own unique language, borrowing from the past and creating future art. So that's where we have this discussion, kind of laying the foundation for the kids, that it is important for us to understand past artists and to look at past artists and present artists to find our own inspiration. Prior to this slide, we just mentioned briefly that his art career stalled, but of course, he being the Renaissance man that he was, he tried something new and he became a songwriter for a few years. Then the civil rights movement came about, and at almost 50 years of age, he developed his art of collage, which is what he is most famous for. And on this slide, it just kind of gives a snapshot of something, I guess you might call him his periods of art that he had. His art was all based on his heritage and his memory. It all had like cubist type of structure. And we've got here, there's an example of art that depicts his childhood in the South, his art that depicts the inner cities of the North, and then of course his love for jazz. Now, all these art pieces, again, were all like, because it was all about cubism, they were all torn apart and rearranged. And the interesting thing is that these art pieces, we've studied artists in the past that had just ginormous and grand pieces of work that were, filled a whole wall. But these pieces were only 14 to 18 inches large. And they would have a photographer come in and take pictures of them and enlarge them. And, but ultimately, he had his own style of doing cubism, and that's where we talk about this. You see here on the left, very simplified, very, pretty, very recognizable type of collage that's going on. And that as his artistry progressed, you'll see that there's different pieces of different things embedded into the art. Like the one in the middle, you'll see like there's a little face out of a window that's probably from a picture. And then there's different solid pieces of paper. And then if you look to the right, they're completely dismantled. And an interesting point about these ones that are on the right, typically he would take 3 photographs or 3 pictures of something and break them up and put them together in a new and interesting way. And that's what we see here. The last slide sets you up to have the discussion on this slide about one of our printed artworks, Summertime. At this point, you want the kids to look for and see things in his summertime artwork, because it's directly going to relate to when they have to create their own collage. So we want to really have a discussion about the things that they see and how they're feeling about it and what might be the story that's being told in this particular piece of artwork. Because when they go to do their own piece of artwork at the end of the lesson, it's going to tap into what this discussion will tap into what it is that they might want to achieve in their own work. And lastly, we just wrap it all up with a conclusion about the artist and talking about how he embraced the past. His art pointed to the future, but he always embraced the past. And the fact that he was a fantastic storyteller with so many life experiences that helped him be the artist that he was. And he died in 1988 at the age of 76. And not that I put it in the notes, but the kids always ask, well, how did he die? We have morbid children, but he died from bone cancer. And that is the last of Mr. Romare Bearden here. And now we're going to move on to our project. All right, it is project time. And at this point, we want to get them excited about the project and talk about all the supplies that they're going to have. And they are going to be making their own collage photo montage, and the idea is for them to play with shape and form in a unique and thought-provoking way. And the things that they'll have at their disposal is solid construction paper, magazines, newspaper, printed paper, and even some fabric and tissue scraps. And on this slide there is a quote, and this particular quote that's here, you want to have them read it or you read it to them and tie it to how they're going to approach their project. Because the way that they approach the project, because it's all about playing with shape and form and moving things around. So it's all about improvisation. It's all about creating their own rhythm. And that ultimately what they create is that their own personal song or story that is in their artwork. And of course, we have our instructions. And on the left side here, I've layered in some examples of collage work that other children have done just to kind of inspire them and also show them how they can use the materials that they have, such as the newspaper that you see in here and magazine clippings. But ultimately, they can just do and make whatever they want. Of course, we want to make sure that the subject is appropriate, and we have the directions here on the right side. Something that you could do is you could give them 1 minute or 30 seconds to read the directions. For whatever reason, they forget the directions are up on the board and they ask 9 million times, what are we doing? How are we doing this? And I always say, look at the board, look at the board. But maybe just give them about 30 seconds. Say, hey, take 30 seconds, read these instructions, and then you then verbally give them the instructions to solidify their understanding of the project. After we've given some directions, we want to set the kids up for success and give them a couple of tips. Now, there are some kids who are going to dive right in. They know exactly what it is that they're going to do. They're going to be inspired by something that they see in a magazine. And then there are going to be some kids who get stalled a little bit. And we just want to encourage them, because it can be intimidating for some kids to have to come up with a topic all on their own or to have free range and do something that they want to do. So we want to encourage them, just, guide them, say, think of a topic, what's your favorite thing to do, whatever it might be. But ultimately, we want to give them these tips, and it might help them along the way that whatever it is that they're doing, they want to make sure that they're looking at shapes and form, maybe looking at pictures that will inspire them, look for colors and textures to make it interesting. And then whatever it is that the kids decide to do, that they want to arrange and rearrange their pieces. That's the thing about collage. And of course, Romare Bearden, when you looked at his stuff, it was all put together in different ways. So they want to arrange and rearrange. And that before they glue anything down, we have an example here where we want to make sure that they're understanding that they need to glue down the background first, then the middle ground, and lastly, the foreground. And that is the project. I hope that they have a lot of fun with it. And at the end of everything, when everyone is done and before you leave, you want to make sure that you thank them for the year, as I thank you for the year and all the volunteering that you did. You guys are amazing. But you want to thank them for their time with you and to remind them that their artwork, that they will work with their teacher to pick their utmost favorite piece that they've done throughout the year to have it on display at our open house art show. And some kids get worried because the art show itself is to, of course, give exposure to the program as well as raise funds to pay for the supplies that we have. And some kids worry and say, someone's going to buy my art. Well, typically it's their parents that buy their art, but that they should pick their favorite piece so that all their friends and all their families can see how hard that they've worked throughout the year. Thank you so much. I hope you have fun with this lesson and project, and happy creating.